Yo, what's going on, chat? Welcome back to another episode of Dudes Talk Sports. I'm your host, DJ, and today we're bringing you guys back with another doubleheader. Obviously, we brought you some nice NBA coverage earlier on, but y'all forget something. This Thursday is the NFL draft, and of course, that is where my Pittsburgh Steelers will make a generational pick and set us up for the future. But before I get into any of that, obviously I got a guest to my right. And before that, let's get some quick things out of the way. Obviously, if you guys want more of this great content, make sure you leave a like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to share this with your baby mamas, your grandmas, your aunties, your husbands, ants, pet turtles, orangutans, maybe your pet crocodiles, your pet tarantulas. Hey, listen, this pod is for everybody. We don't discriminate out here. And without further ado, let's get right into him, y'all. Obviously, to my right here, I'm pretty stoked about today's guest, man. This has been something we've been trying to, cook up behind the scenes. Obviously, I've been telling y'all I've been wanting to bring in guests here, and, now's the time better than ever to get it, and why not, with the NFL draft coverage, man. So, to my right, I got my homie Andrew here. Obviously, Andrew, you want to tell us where you from and what you do, man?
Yeah, so I've known Elvis since high school, both from the Bay. I go to college out here in Arizona, and I wouldn't say I'm nothing of a draft expert. However, I do follow the draft a lot. Draft season is my shit. It's been my thing since for as long as I can remember. So I'll try and provide as much insight as I can to each prospect, each team needs, what might happen based off rumors, off team history. Yeah, let's get to it.
Listen, guys, this is the guy that Mel Kiper has nightmares about. All right, you get this guy on ESPN, Mel Kiper Jr. gonna be shitting his pants, y'all. I said it here first. I just had it. It just needed to be said. Now, obviously, guys, if you guys live under a rock, the NFL draft does kick off April 24th in the one, the only Green Bay, Wisconsin at Lambeau Field. Y'all know you can watch this anywhere, ABC, ESPN, but enough of that further stuff. Let's get into it, man. So, Andrew, obviously, one of the things I guess I would like to kick off with in this draft is the lack of trade talks.
Mm.
I feel like there's always been trades like beyond like in years past, maybe whether it's trading up or trading back prior, but so far the draft set seems set in stone in order right now. What do you think about that? Like, why do you think that's the case this year?
I think it's kind of a twofold thing. Part of it is just because usually when draft trade talks happen, it's within like the top 10.
Yeah,
So it's teams trying to move up to get like a blue chip guy or trying to move up to get a quarterback. As many of us know, the quarterback class this year is pretty lackluster. And we know the Titans aren't going to budge on that first overall pick, which is Cam Ward. He's really the only quarterback worth taking in the first. So that's kind of why that's not a lot of draft talk or draft trade talk. The other part of it is just kind of how this class is built. And a lot of things you'll see around draft media is the fact that this class doesn't really have like top end talent outside of maybe a very small handful of guys. There's maybe 14 to 18 guys you would consider first round prospects regardless of the year. And
right.
outside of that, there's not much of a difference between the prospects. Like the guy you'll get at like 17 to 20 is going to be more or less the same grade as the guy you get in the mid second. So I think a lot of teams are just content staying put and kind of just letting the board fall to them because they'll know that they're going to get a similarly graded guy either way. So you don't really have to give up draft capital for nothing.
Got you.
But with that being said, especially in these past few days, there have been a lot of draft trade talks heating up, mostly surrounding Ashton Genty and people wanting to move up to get him. And that in itself is a whole other topic with the Ashton Genty smokescreen drama. So that in itself can cause a whirlwind of domino effects.
So, knowing that, I guess my next question is to you. How does this impact like teams, in the first, right? Like Does this change up the strategy when you go versus best player available versus need, knowing just how, I guess, the lack of depth in the certain positions this year?
I think it does. I think for most teams, the balance between best player available and team need will actually kind of line up to some degree. Just kind of like what I said.
Oh no. Oh no. Hey, we got some
So
technical.
like
Oh no, we
a
good.
lot. So like I was gonna say like edge is a big need just overall around the NFL, both edge and like interior offensive linemen,
Yeah.
both huge needs around the NFL. Thankfully, the draft is absolutely littered with interior offensive linemen and edges this year for people to pick. So you can kind of go so you can go best player available, also get the guy you need. So I think it lines up pretty well. It's gonna line up pretty good for most teams this year. A lot of teams should come out with the starter.
No, for sure, man. Yeah. And so I guess going into some of the more generational picks, right? For example, a guy like a Travis Hunter, he's one of those highly touted guys. What's your thoughts on him? You obviously hear a lot of talk, and even he's flat out said it, pretty much putting this ultimatum where he's only want to play two way, and he needs the team that drafts him to play him both ways. Do you see him more as a wide receiver or a cornerback or both?
Me personally, I see him more as a corner, and I think a lot of people that you'll see and talk to will agree with me on that, just because of his rare ball skills.
Yeah,
Just the way he can play the ball, his IQ, especially in zone, it's really something that can be lethal, especially if a team hones in on it. Now, if we're getting into the nitty-gritty, he's still actually kind of raw as a corner, just when it comes to like pure technique
yeah.
and just, technique and just press man and just sticking in the coverage. He's still a little raw, which isn't very surprising considering that he's played at both Jackson State and Colorado, not exactly renowned for their prospect development. But I think if we're purely looking at where he's gonna be the best player, I think it's gonna be on defense at corner because let's think about it this way. He can start on defense at corner and still come in on like third and long, third and medium and make an impact. You can't really say the same in the inverse. Yeah, like he can like start like he could start at wide receiver and he could be a really good wide receiver. But I don't think he can have that same impact on the defensive side as he would if he just started there, just because defense is just a little more complicated where you need to know all the checks, you need to know all the coverage mixtures. So I think it would be hard for him trying to learn an entire NFL offense along with having to learn the checks of an NFL defense. I think it's just a different beast rather than if you started at corner, you can just let them go in from one play on offense, say, okay, you're gonna run a dig, and if they're impressed, then you just run a fade. That's way easier than sending him out at corner on like third and long and saying, okay, we're playing cover four, but if they go trips and we play this, it's just way easier if you just put him at corner and then let them just burn people on third down, maybe for like 20 snaps a game.
That's valid, yeah. And I guess I asked that because I know there's a lot of talks about potentially him going at number two over the Browns. And I know the Browns' usage would probably lean towards somewhere like obviously they lost Amari Cooper in the offseason, so or during that trade, so wanting to plug and play him at receiver. You think that would work out? And how do you think somewhere like Cleveland could utilize him at corner, man, or even just receiver?
I mean, it'll work out. He's talented enough where regardless of what he's gonna do, it's gonna work out. It's just the degree of which it'll work out. I think if you go somewhere like Cleveland, he'll be fine either way. I don't think Cleveland's infrastructure is gonna totally ruin him as a prospect. Because I mean, as long as you understand his strengths and weaknesses, which are at the receiver position, which is just run after the catch and him being just such an electric athlete where he can just burn anybody over the top. And if you can just get him involved as much as you possibly can, just to take the weight off of that running game and both whoever the hell's starting at quarterback next year, then I think he'll be fine. You just gotta let him go out there and make plays, which I have absolutely no worries that Cleveland would allow him to do.
For sure. I guess in your eyes, where do you think, or which team would you think fits him best?
Ooh, I think very selfishly, I would I would like to see him go to the Jags. If we're talking just teams in the top 10,
Yeah,
because you already have Brian Thomas Jr. there, who's a burner on his own. And so if you're able to pair him with Travis Hunter, who's also a burner, the teams are going to be in a bind trying to figure out who they want to double, who they want to bracket. That's going to put teams in a tough spot. And also too that the Jags do need a number one corner. So he fits both of those needs as a complementary weapon to Brian Thomas Jr., but also as that CB1 that they so desperately need.
yeah, I'm with you on that. I've always been the pro like Travis Hunter to the Jags kind of guy, but it's just always a matter of will he even slide to that pick, man, just because of how highly touted he is. But
Yeah, if Cleveland doesn't draft them, then something's got to be up because there's no shot that he makes it past two or at least three.
yeah, I feel like New York. If he doesn't go to the Browns, I personally have them going with Abdul Carter and him going to New
Mhm.
York. Outside of that, man, it's like them teams might be them GMs, man. I think they might have to clean house if that's the case. Listen, Joe Schoen already missing out on Jaden Daniels and then missing out on Travis Hunter too. You might just have to fire him right after the draft on the spot. But
Yeah, not exactly the best predicament to be in,
that's what happens when you let
but
go of your best player, Saquon, and pay freaking Daniel Jones. Man, who didn't
that's
see
also
that one
what happens
coming?
when you're the New York.
Pretty much, man.
Could have been me.
No. But going back to another top prospect, we did talk about the lack of QB talent, but Cam Ward does look to be the top QB. But are there any red flags that we might be missing on him?
No, I mean if we're being super nitpicky, you can maybe consider the fact that he did sit out the second half of that Miami Bowl game, where if he just played out the rest of it, they would have won, arguably. You can maybe call that a red flag. I think people had like a really knee-jerk reaction to when that happened, and then we all just kind of forgot about it when we realized he was the only QB that's worth a damn.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's not a perfect prospect, but I mean, out of all the QB prospects that's here, he's probably not only the most complete as it stands, but also he's the one with probably one of the higher ceilings, at least all things considered.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't really say there are any red flags to be wary of.
Yeah. I just remember seeing him live in person against that Cal game and, down to the fourth when we think like Cal's going to seal it away. Cam Ward just kind of puts the team on his back and is just slinging it out there. So I feel like he definitely has that ability, the clutch genes, to really just come from behind. And I think that's also a big thing, especially a third down kind of guy. That's going to be crucial in the NFL, I feel like. If you're not that third down guy, that's where like the money's made.
Yeah, no, like his improvisational ability is is probably one of the things that stands out the most, especially in a QB class that's pretty lacking in that. I mean, Shador isn't really able to kind of make those plays out of structure, even though he was forced to most of the time because his offensive line was abysmal.
Yeah.
Jackson Dart, we don't really know what he is just because that Ole Miss offense is so weird. Jalen Milrow was probably the closest thing when it comes to that improvisation, but he's just so raw as a passer that it's kind of hard to tell. It's kind of hard to hone in on that one. You can't really trust him to make a lot of throws, even though his speed is just otherworldly for the QB position.
Yeah, that's valid. It'll be interesting to see how he plays out because, yeah, like we were saying, I don't think he like Titans are pretty much locked in on him. I mean, there's a reason you pretty much tell Travis and Shador, we don't want your workout. Like, just leave us alone. We want our Pookie Bear and Cam Ward. But let's pivot back a little bit to the draft philosophies, man. Talk to me about sort of how you think each team is going to approach the draft, or at least some in your
I'll be honest with
radar.
you. I'll be honest with you. I don't know.
Like,
It's really hard to tell because especially because you're trying to balance between what teams historically do and also just what the draft presents you. So take for example like the Cowboys. Like they desperately need a running back. And Omarion Hampton would theoretically fit that mold. But we also know that they like to keep their SEC guys home, especially if there's a prospect coming out of Texas, which is where Matthew Golden comes in.
yep,
So it's hard to balance between, well, Marion Hampton is the fit there, and me personally, I'm really high on Marion Hampton. I have been since his freshman year. He's tore the ACC up
yeah,
every year he's stepped on that field. But it's a very Jerry Jones pick to go with Matthew Golden out of Texas at number 12, especially when you need a complement to CeeDee Lamb. But also just in general, I think with the strength of offensive line and defensive line in this class, which are probably two of just the biggest needs in NFL in general, I think we're going to see a huge run on those in the first round because I think teams are going to get paranoid that their top flight guys that they know can be surefire starters are going to go. So they're just going to take them just to be safe.
interesting. Yeah, I could definitely see that, especially towards the later rounds. And knowing somebody like Jerry, I'm with you on that. I think he's gonna go with
Mm.
his Texas guys. But let's talk about a team who maybe they might switch things up. Your Chicago Bears. Obviously, you guys bring in Ben Johnson. You still have polls, so maybe things might not be too much different. But how do you see that playing out, especially given your guys' team needs? And additionally, Ben Johnson, I feel like he'd have a big say in who he wants. You know, he'll have his certain guys that he's gonna want to cater to. Oh, I just realized he was frozen. hey, hey, there's the technical difficulties, y'all. You gotta bear with us here, man. We got we got on one end one guy from Cali and the other one in Zona. So, hey, this is like perfect meme material right here. You know this like little like I don't know what's it called, but yeah, y'all know what I'm saying, man. But I guess I'll kind of fill in here while we kind of let him sort of figure out his connections, man. So going back to a team like Dallas, right, and just overall figuring out draft philosophies, I think because obviously we got new GMs, new. Oh, there we go. You're good. I can hear you
Oh,
and see you. We are good.
let's go.
So, kind of what I was asking you
All right.
before. Go into a team like your Bears, right? You still got big boy Poles at the helm as GM, but you do have a new
Yeah.
offensive mind like Ben Johnson. What are you thinking there?
It it really depends on what the Jaguars and the Raiders do because both Poles and Johnson have openly said that this is a team that they think can win right now. And so when you say stuff like that, that means you can make picks like a team that can win right now. And what I mean by that is you can really start taking weapons as opposed to having to try and build. So I say that in regards to both the running back and the tight end position. because typically you'd only see teams go with that in the first round if they already have that foundation to build upon. Like
Right.
you're not gonna see a team like I don't know, like the Jaguars or the Panthers. You're not gonna see them go with that kind of luxury pick in round one just because they can't. They're gonna need to build up that foundation with that star talent before you start making luxury picks like Ashton Gentile, Marion Hampton, Travion Henderson. You can't really take big swings like that, or else you turn to the New York Giants where you have the star player in your backfield, but you can't do anything with them because the rest of your team just can't keep up with it.
Right.
And so to that point, again, it kind of depends what happens at picks 5 and 6 because if Ashton Genty falls past the Raiders, I think we can see Poles get aggressive like he has in previous years and try and move up to get him, maybe with like a trade with like the Jets or the Panthers. But in like a very like break class worst case scenario where all the top offensive linemen go, Ashton Genty goes, Tyler Warren goes. There's been reports that they're probably just gonna stick and pick with the tackle, Kelvin Banks out of Texas, which is something I don't hate. I think Bears fans kind of got themselves excited with the new regime. We want to go win now. We want weapons. We want to support Caleb as much as we can. And I think in our heads, you do that by getting a weapon. How the NFL tells you to do it is you draft O lineman, as the Eagles have shown us.
Yeah.
So I think I think if Genty isn't there, then I think the pick is almost for sure Kelvin Bakes that they can't find a trade down partner. Me personally, I would very selfishly want Omarion Hampton as that pick because I think behind that offensive line, and if you can pick up another receiver in free agency, if you can pick up another receiver in the third or second round, to help complement what you already have in Roma Dunze and DJ Moore. I think that offense can be absolutely lights out lethal. But again, it just kind of depends how the board falls. I think as of now, just planning for life without Ash and Genty, the three picks that you look at there are Kelvin Banks, Tyler Warren, and Omarion Hampton, with the most likely one being Kelvin Banks.
I see. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I don't hate it. Obviously, the Bears are very aggressive in free agency, you know, making those trades and signing the guys so they did. Clearly, offensive line was a huge need for you guys, and I like what you guys have done so far in addressing it. I think a pick like Kelvin Banks would definitely further solidify it. I think just me personally, I'm not the highest on Kelvin Banks Jr., but obviously time will tell on that. But obviously, I like the pick going with the needs such as like a running back position or a tight end, a weapon of that sorts. That's where I see the Bears going, and for sure, I feel like that could be the most impactful. Moving on to a different team.
Yeah.
Oh, what are you gonna say?
I was gonna say like Kelvin Banks is the flashiest pick, but I think when you're thinking long-term team building, um, we do have Braxton Jones at left tackle, and that is Kelvin Banks' natural position. He could slide into guard, but he'd probably be just fine at tackle. But the thing is, Braxton Jones has an expiring contract, I believe, after this year. So we do need to extend him still. And as you know very well, Dan Moore got paid a lot of money, even though he is not that good of a player.
Yeah,
So if Dan Moore gets paid that money, I don't even want to imagine what Braxton Jones will get paid because Braxton Jones is a lot better than Dan Moore. And even though that's not saying much, the money will speak for itself. So I
right.
think you can kind of take that pick to protect yourself against having to pay Braxton Jones premium, even though he's not really a premium tackle.
Got you. No, for sure. I could definitely. I mean, when you bring that up, I definitely see the, I guess, the attraction in wanting to pick a Kelvin Banks in that position in that pick for sure. So that'll be definitely interesting to see what Chicago does and just how the rest of the dominoes fall there. But I want to get your insight on a team like the Raiders because they as well are looking at a guy like Genti. but they do have a couple of other needs. And with a new GM and Tom Telesco, what are you thinking there?
See, this is hard because you're trying to balance out what Tom Telesco would do, and you're trying to balance out what Pete Carroll probably wants. And what Pete Carroll probably wants is he wants Ashton Genty because all Pete Carroll teams are built off a very strong run game with star running backs. Going back to Marshawn Lynch, even going back to USC with Reggie Bush and Lindale White, he loves his strong running game. It doesn't matter what year in the NFL we are, he's gonna want a strong running game. And I don't blame him at all. But I don't think the Raiders are in a position as a team to take a luxury pick like that in the top 10. I think you can get more bang for your buck if you pick a guy like Armand Membu, who's a very high ceiling um, offensive tackle prospect, and he can come in and start right away day one at right tackle. And and I'll be honest with you, the Bears' offensive line last season wasn't that bad. They were actually pretty good for the guys they had.
It wasn't
Colton
terrible
Miller
by
is
any
a
means.
Colton Miller is a really good left tackle. Come again?
I said no for sure. Like given like it's the Raiders, man. I That was the one thing I was like, yeah, I'll give it to them. The line wasn't terrible. I mean, obviously we saw plenty of examples of just abysmal offensive line last year. So
Yeah, no,
interesting.
like the first half of the season they were kind of shaky, and then once they kind of moved stuff around, they put Jackson Powers Johnson back at center, they put Dylan Parham at right guard, and Colton Miller kind of found his stride. They were looking pretty good, so I think if you can build upon that strength, then you can take a running back later in the second, and you'll be completely fine because there's a team building philosophy that I generally ascribe to, where if you think about it this way. The running back that you have in your backfield will set your ceiling, but the offensive line you have is going to set the floor.
Right.
And so going back to the Giants Saquon Barkley idea, Saquon Barkley elevated their ceiling a ton just because he's the best running back in the NFL, and he's probably one of the best running backs we'll see in this millennium.
Right.
But that floor was so low because their offensive line was terrible. So, regardless of how high that ceiling was, the floor was always going to be low just because the line couldn't block. I mean, he was
Yeah.
fighting, his yards before contact was like terrible every year just because people kept getting through. And obviously the Raiders are probably in a better spot than the Giants were when they were picking Saquon, but you're still not competing with like some of the better lines in the NFL. So if you just keep building the line, then maybe you can just take a running back in the second, like Travion Henderson, a Quinshon Junkins, and they're going to be like 1,100, 1,000 yard rushers, and you can get more or less the same production out of them than you would a Genty. And if anything, you can just pick a running back in the first round next year just to kind of make up for it. But I think if I were Tom Telesco, I would pick Armand Membu at that sixth pick and just call it a day. You know you're going to get a good right tackle. The line's going to instantly become one of your strengths of the team, if not the strength. And you can sleep peacefully knowing that you can ride into the future with Gino or whoever's playing quarterback, that they can have a strong run game and a strong offensive line to rely on.
Got you. No, for sure. I definitely like that thought process behind that. And has yet to see what the Raiders will do because, like I said, it's the Raiders. They'll probably do some
Yeah.
Raider pick, even if you got Pete Carroll, Tom Telesco, and even Tom Brady as a minority owner. But that's just me being a pessimistic guy and just loving to shit on the Raiders team. Pivoting to a different team, what do you think my Steelers will do at pick 21? Where do you think that will go? Because at that pick, my thought process is obviously we need to go for our major need at quarterback. But at that pick, do you still go for need or do you just go for best available prospect?
You see, it's hard because the QB class is really weird this year. where I mean, there's really only one first round QB, but there's more than one team picking in the first round that needs a QB. So it really depends. I mean, we know that Shadur's not going to New York anymore, so that kind of helps things out. We don't know if he's gonna go to the Saints at 9 because Derek Carr's hurt and he's getting old. He's getting old. You need someone to come in to replace him. And if he's not ready by the start of the season, you need someone to play quarterback back there. And I don't think you're gonna want to stick Jake Hayner back there. So you need someone, and Shadur's probably gonna be there at 9. So do they want to take him? They might want to, or are the Saints okay with waiting until the second to maybe get like a Jackson Dart or like a Jalen Milrow? But even then, we don't know if they're going to be there because there have been some murmurs and some reports that like a Jackson Dart could sneak into the first round at your Steelers pick.
Yeah.
And also to that, we do know that Jalen Milrow got an invite to the draft, which you typically don't see unless the NFL knows they're going to get picked in the first round. And Jalen Milrow was nothing close to a first round pick at any point during this draft process.
No.
So God knows who might trade back into the first to try and take Jalen Milrow ahead of some team picking early in the second. So I think when it comes to the Steelers, they could maybe get a little antsy, knowing that teams are going to want to try and trade back up into the back end of the first to take a quarterback. So maybe they reach and pick a Jackson Dart there. They could also get lucky and just have Shadur slide to them and just pick him there. So it's not a good spot to be in at all. I mean, ideally, if you were Pittsburgh and you didn't need a quarterback so badly, or if you knew Aaron Rodgers was going to come back, you could, actually draft for need, maybe try and take one of the running backs that are available, maybe even try and trade back with the team looking to trade up, or you maybe draft a D lineman like a Kenneth Grant. But I don't think they're in a position to do that, all things considered. So the Steelers are going to be interesting to watch because we know the needs that they have, and considering the market for QBs in this draft, I think it might have to force their hand into doing something they don't necessarily want to do.
Interesting. Yeah. And that's the never ending frustrating part about this. What I like to call eternal purgatory, man. We'll never be so shit to where we can pick, in that top pick, maybe get somebody good, but we're never gonna be like good enough to pick lower end, we'll have that solid roster, so doesn't help. You basically put all your eggs into Aaron Rodgers, and now he's just gonna go about his business the way he's gonna want to, like he always has. And so, yeah, I guess that's been the biggest thing with me. This is like the normally I've always had some sort of idea where the Steelers are gonna go, but this time around, with Omar Khan at the helm, and just with the multiple blaring needs that we have, it's very hard because quarterback is one of them. I feel like edge could also be up there because right now contract talks with TJ and Steelers just aren't going well. They're not progressing at all whatsoever. And because of that, we have a dilemma of trying to pay TJ definitely more than Miles Garrett. That's what's been reported. He wants more than Miles. And it's like, if we're going to pay that much for a non QB position, where does that leave with quarterback? And so that's why I'm just like, ooh, that it just it makes things very much difficult for me. And at that pick, obviously, if a person like Shador could slide, I wouldn't hate that. Jackson Dart, I'm still mixed on him as a prospect because here's the way I look at it. A guy like Jackson Dart has really strong upside, but I feel like the situation really wouldn't work out unless we have a guy like Aaron Rodgers on the helm. Somebody who Jackson Dart could sit behind and just really see. And also knowing Jackson Dart's a guy who's going to really sling it down the field, really throw them deep bombs. And within a system like Arthur Smith's system, I'm not too really sure how that will play out versus somebody like Shador Sanders, who's very much like loyal to the system. I think he could really fit with an Arthur Smith system. But yeah, that's sort of the things that I'm really thinking about in terms of the Steelers. I guess one thing I do have to ask you, right, is we obviously talked a lot about the day one picks, but who are some of your sleepers in terms of
Mhm.
like the day two, day three picks? Guys that maybe the media doesn't talk about, or we or just haven't seen or heard about.
These are the guys I love.
What's up?
Yeah, these sleeper guys. These are the guys. These sleeper guys are the ones you live for because these are usually the ones that are the cornerstones of your franchise, and and are the ones that are going to be steady and kind of be starters into the future. And so and kind of going back to the point I made earlier, where there's not a lot of difference between like the back ends of the first round guys, and, like the mid second round guys. That also kind of applies to um like the day two, day three guys. Like there's not a ton of difference. Like I think you can probably come out of the draft with the starter at each round up until like round like five. This draft is pretty good on the draft may not be the best when it comes to top end talent, but when it comes to depth, there's a ton of talent. Like if we go like the interior offensive line, like there's loaded with guys that can start for you day one or at least compete to start day one. Looking
Right.
at like a Wyatt Millum, Tate Ratledge, Jonas Wainaya, those guys are going to compete for playing time right now. And if you're a team that needs a guard or needs someone to compete at guard, those are your dudes to look at. And if we go to the running back groups, there is a ton of guys that can come in and play some kind of role. So like some like popular draft darlings are like a Brayshawn Tolan. He's is he absolute burner. I think he ran like a 4.3 something at the combine. If we're looking at day two running backs, like a Quinshon Judkins, I'm a huge fan of. I think he has a really good blend of like power and agility
Okay.
that can make him like a really versatile back. And I think he really showed out in his 1 year at OSU, kind of running more of like a pro style offense. I think he looked great in it. There's obviously some things he can clean up, but I think for the most part, he looked great. And even going to like a Travion Henderson too, he's a really nice change of pace back. He's really nice change of pace back with a lot of like receiving upside. And also like a Caleb Johnson. He's a little bit of a weird prospect because he's listed at, I believe, like 6'1" or 6'2" and like 230,
Yeah.
but he doesn't play like it. Like you would think looking at his tape that he would play more like a Derrick Henry, but he really doesn't. He really kind of likes to be patient and find the holes and kind of like a zone run scheme. And even when like he does make contact, there's not a lot of pop to his game. So so with a guy like Caleb Johnson, I wouldn't be confused with him for like a power back. He's more of like a zone back that just happens to be really oversized. Going to the defensive side, if you look at this edge group, there is a lot of day two, day three guys that can make an impact. Some of my favorites are like a JT Tuimolola. He's just a really solid edge prospect. He may not be like someone you want as like your star, but
Yeah.
he could be like a really good number two edge prospect, really well rounded game. Can be like a 4-3 defensive end. His run defense is already one is already probably the best in the class outside of like a Shamar Stewart and like a Miko Williams. He has decent pass rushing upside. Princely Umamielen, not so much of a run stopper, but as it does, if he could just go to a team where he can just be a designated pass rusher on third down, he could probably do a lot of damage while he develops his run defense.
Sure.
Um, One of probably the most interesting guys in this draft is David Walker out of Central Arkansas, FCS guy, but his production was out the roof. Like, let me look this up. I think he had 18 or 20 sacks this year. but his production was absolutely bonkers. Now, the only issue is that he came into the combine at like 6 foot even. So
Hmm.
obviously that's the one caveat with him is just the fact that he's tiny for an NFL defensive end.
Yeah.
Yeah, 6'1", 263, and that's what he was listed as. So he's probably a little smaller than that, to be honest. But his pass rushing upside is out the roof. Again, he's one of those guys where if you can just bring him in back on third down and tell him to go get the passer, he could definitely make a living in the league doing that.
That's solid. Like to I
So
like
yeah,
that.
there's a flavor of there's a like if you need a role filled somewhere, there's a flavor of prospects for everybody that can come in and fill that role pretty well from day one.
Hmm. I guess another thing I was thinking about too while you're talking about that, Steelers don't have a second rounder, so we could trade back. As much as I would hate it, but probably score some stuff in the second round. Maybe pick a running back around those later rounds. Um, that's one thing. Because I think running back is a big need for
Mhm.
us, and if we can get somebody in the day two, day three to replace Najee, we'll definitely need that. I don't like
Yeah,
the
I think in terms of like starting running backs, you'd have to definitely trade back into the second because after Caleb Johnson, maybe DJ Giddens, you're
yeah.
kind of looking more at like rotational backs, not really like your true running back one who you can give your carries to.
Yeah, and that was the big thing is we relied on Najee to do that, and having Jalen Warren back, that's great. I love his upside, but he's not a main back like a bell cow kind of guy. We need a guy who can help fit in a two back system. But I guess one team that I do want to hear your thoughts on, right? As we can kind of wrap this up, is the Niners, right? What the hell do the
Mm.
Niners do? They have completely flipped the switch in their philosophy. And I feel like there's a lot of questions in the air regarding where they go and what their needs are.
I think the Niners just need talent on defense. Like if you look at their depth chart, their offense isn't terrible.
Yeah. Obviously losing Debo Samuel, but he was definitely on the decline last year, not really doing much. Brandon Ayuk, we have yet to
Year,
see.
so that helps.
Yeah.
But I really think that if you're going to use that top pick,
Oh. Um he's kind of cutting in and out, so we'll give him a second to kind of regain connection here. But kind of like what I was saying, right? Offensive weapons is definitely. Oh, we are
oh,
reconnecting.
that's
I
breaking
see
down.
some feedback. I hear your audio, but video feed's a little shaken up. Maybe he might have cut out again. There we go. Yeah. So, what were you saying again?
All right. All right, we're back. Yeah, I was just saying that the offense probably isn't a pressing need because you've hit on enough draft picks where you can kind of put it off. The
Right.
only reason, if I were the Niners, that I would draft offense is if somehow Armand Membu falls to you. Because if I were Kyle Shanahan and Armand Membu was on the board and we picked anybody else, I would kill the GM for making me trot back out Colton Miktovitz at right tackle.
Yeah. That's a big one. That is a.
But
I suppose so.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, they're probably gonna end up addressing that like day two, day three. But as for their first round pick, they're probably gonna use it on the defense, and they have a few directions they can go with it. What I see them doing personally is drafting Walter Nolan, which I know is a bit of a spicy take,
Oh,
but I truly believe league the league in general is a lot higher on Walter Nolan than a lot of draft media is, just because that he has like his traits are unbelievable. Like especially when you go back and watch that Ole Miss tape, like he a lot of the times he just wins off of pure athleticism alone, and the times where he does flash those bits of technique, he looks otherworldly, like the best defensive tackle in the class. You just like to see him develop a little more, and we know with the Niners, they're not afraid to take like traitsy, underdeveloped defensive tackles or just defensive players in general. Look at Javon Kinlaw. I know that didn't work out, but I think Walter Nolan is a way better prospect than Javon Kinlaw was. So I think if we want my prediction as to what direction they'll go, I think the most likely thing they're gonna do is take Walter Nolan. I think the second most likely thing they'll do is potentially take Jahad Campbell to kind of fill in that hole that Dre Greenlaw left in the linebacking core.
yeah,
I don't know how much they trust D Winters to play alongside Fred Warner, but I think Jahad Campbell can come in day one, play start at linebacker, and kind of fill that Sam linebacker role that Dre Greenlaw left. I think the other direction they could go is drafting corner, and I think in that case you would either draft Will Johnson or Jade Barron. Me personally, I consider Jade Barron a nickel corner, and you already have I'm not even gonna try to say his first name, but Lenore, you have him playing nickel already. So you
yeah,
probably end up wanting to go Will Johnson since he's more of a traditional outside corner and a pretty good one at that.
sure.
So those are kind of the three directions I see them going. I would kind of be shocked if they went anything.
Yeah, yeah, no. Oh, he might have cut out. So as we let him kind of connect back and gain connection, I think kind of adding to what he was saying, I personally have a Will Johnson going to the Niners. I think that would be a good one.
They
Um,
believe that they
oh, all right, we're good. We're good. You're back. You lost connection there.
no. Okay, all right. Yeah, I was just saying that I think probably the craziest pick that I could see them taking that's realistic is Shamar Stewart,
Mm,
just to maybe help take some pressure off Bosa and help develop him.
yeah,
Me personally, I don't really like Stewart all that much as a prospect, but but again, I think he's one of those guys that the NFL is going to be a lot higher on just because he's absolute freak of nature.
yeah.
So I could see them going that route, but I wouldn't prefer it if I were a Niners fan.
Interesting. Yeah, Shamar Stewart's been an interesting one. I think the edge has definitely been a need that I could see being addressed, considering the issue of Bosa just not being able to stay healthy on the field and missing out on a guy like Joey Bosa definitely doesn't help. So you still have that need, and I think it does need to be addressed in one way, shape, or another. Um, oh, he might not be connected again. He's a little cut out, but as we let him reconnect again. Yeah, I think Edge is also going to be another one that I think I would say keep on the lookout for. You know, corner is definitely the one. There we go. You're good. All right.
Yeah, Wi-Fi.
All good, man. No worries. I think I don't know if you caught what I was saying. I was saying Edge was also another one, like kind of what you were saying, just because of Bosa's injuries and not being able to stay healthy. So you kind of want another guy alongside him. Especially doesn't help not being able to land Joey Bosa.
Yeah, that really put a hole in their plans, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, I think if Shamar Stewart were to have a landing spot that's kind of within like the top 15,
Yeah,
then the Niners would probably be the best spot for him.
Got you, man. Couple, few more here. This one, I want to hear your case as you have seen this guy in the flesh. What's going on with your
Mm.
guy, McMillan? I have heard he's been kind of like going up and down, you know? And I think the one video that really struck me was Steve Smith's film analysis on him and just sort of his take. He was sort of saying like he's not really high on him just because of his limited route tree and sort of him being a contested catch kind of guy. But yeah, what are your thoughts on him after obviously, being there alongside and just kind of watching him play this past year?
Well, first of all, the absolute freak of nature. If you see him in person, he looks like he looks like a tree. It's probably the best way to put it. Like his wingspan is out the roof. He's like 6'5", plays at 220, 215, which if you look at him, we wouldn't expect because he holds the weight pretty well. But I don't know what's been going on with him like the past like month or two. Like I don't know why people have all of a sudden gone so low on him. Like he's had elite production. I don't necessarily agree with the route tree argument because yes, if you look at the tape from last year, the route tree was very limited, but also that offense in general was just really weird. You
Yeah,
had to change the play caller. It was a completely new offense compared to what they ran the past 2 years. If you go back to the tape from his freshman and his sophomore year, his route tree is a lot more diverse because they did run that like West Coast Sean McVay style offense. And so
right.
they asked him to kind of like, be that guy over the middle, run those choice routes, win in the slot, win on the outside. They asked him to do a lot and he did it all. And I know there's a lot of like concern with like his top end speed and like him not being able to separate. And honestly, I don't really have those concerns with him because one, you can be one of two things in the NFL. You can either be a separator or you can be a contested catch guy. He's very clearly a contested catch guy. So, yes, he might not separate, and that might be an issue against bigger corners, but he won't be playing those size of corners for the most part. And if anything, you can just stick him in the slot and just let him go to work against whatever nickel corner happens to get matched up with him that day. And
Yeah.
so I think his versatility between being like a true X receiver on the outside and being a slot receiver on the inside kind of protects him against those separation issues. And even when it comes to top speed, I think just his play style and the way he tempos his routes kind of prevents him from hitting top speed because Pete does. It's not like he has a bad top speed. I mean, when you watch him on tape, yes, and he might look slow, but he's just one of those guys where just the way he's proportioned and the way he moves, it's never going to look like he runs fast just because he's smooth in everything he does. And I think you see that in his route running, where every single cut he makes and every movement he does is very precise and smooth. And that carries along to how he runs as well. So I don't really have any concerns with him. I've seen people throw around the AJ Green comp to him. I don't know if I go that high, but
I was
I
thinking
think a
like
kind
a
of like a
Drake
Drake
London.
London, maybe
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
yeah, no, I've seen the Mike Evans and the AJ Green comps thrown around, which I think um like especially the Mike Evans one makes zero sense because Mike Evans is like a statue after the catch. If that man catches the ball, he's going down because he has no wiggle. At least definitely not anymore. But McMillan does a lot of damage after the catch, and I think that's what makes part of his game so unique because he's such a big receiver that can win those contested catches, but also he can work in space so well. So I think that's what kind of makes this comp a little weird. But I mean, I personally have no worries. He's my wide receiver one, just like I'm sure he is for many people. I don't know why people are falling off the wagon all of a sudden. I mean, me personally, I have him going to the Jags at 5.
Interesting.
So that's
Oh,
just to show you where I kind of rank him.
okay. Okay. Wow, him at the Jags. I could see it. I would just think they want to address maybe corner or that pass defense more, but I mean, having a guy
I
like
mean,
Brian
you
Thomas
could,
Jr. That's an interesting one, I will say.
yeah,
Just based on
yeah,
need.
but yes, need, but also my thought process is that you're getting Liam Cohen, Duval. He comes from Tampa Bay where they have a lot of weapons and where they historically didn't invest in running back early. Like they got Rashad White and Bucky Irving both on day two. So I think he's okay with not taking Ashton Genty there.
Yeah,
And obviously coming from Tampa Bay, you have Mike Evans, and you already kind of have your number one A, one B, and Brian Thomas Jr. And if you can kind of complement him with his other number one, you can kind of try and recreate that Tampa Bay magic that they have, where they had arguably two number one receivers in both Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. So I think he wants to try and recreate that. I also don't think that there's necessarily a DB worth taking that high. And and where they're going to be picking in the second round, you can 100% take a corner or a safety that can fill in that role from day one. Maybe they won't be a Pro Bowler, but they're going to be a solid starter. So I think the best combination for them would be taking T Mac at 5 to kind of help support Trevor Lawrence, give him one last chance, show him what he can do with extra weapons. And then maybe in the second, if you're still concerned with the secondary, then you can take some kind of whatever safety or corner is there.
got you. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good argument there. I can't lie with that, especially you might as well you paid Trevor Lawrence that money. Let's see what he can do pairing up, with that dual wide receiver, that 1A, 1B that we obviously know is becoming more of a standard that you need in order if you want to win and really take it to the next level. And so, I guess to wrap things up, I guess this is more college related, but what's more of like and for those like that don't know, like it kind of helps along with like the school in terms of like the football program. I guess talk a little bit about that. Kind of like tell the people what you do and maybe some like cool things or cool combos you've been a part of or seen.
Hold on, rewind that. I'm lagging out right now.
Oh, good. I was just saying like kind of tell the people a bit more about your role with like the football program and just maybe talk about a little bit like behind the scenes what goes on in a D1 program, maybe things that people don't know or don't see. Like just maybe like one observation you thought was pretty
Well,
cool.
well, there's a lot that goes behind the D1 program. It's D1 programs are basically mini cities. Like there's it's hard for me to even get into it just because there's so much that goes into it. You have the nutrition staff that basically controls most of what the players eat. You have operations, which controls basically almost everything that goes on. You have the sports medicine staff, which does their best to keep the players healthy. You have the strength and conditioning staff, which does their best to get them stronger. I mean, there's a ton of moving parts. And that building is has more people in it than you can probably imagine. And I would consider our facility fairly small just because of how it's built, but even in then, it's like a mini city in there. Like there's people in there been that have been there for years that I barely figured out have been working there. And I've been there for going on 3 years now. So yeah, there's a ton that goes behind. There's an unbelievable amount that goes behind the scenes at D1, and there's even at just a practice, there's probably like 30 to 40 workers that help make that magic happen just at practice
Damn.
alone, just to give you an idea. And that's just practice. So I think you can imagine what it's like for like a game day or just like a day to day kind of thing.
Yeah. And I guess like one last question, right? What's like your favorite like game day experience that you've had personally?
Ooh, that's tough. At Arizona Stadium, I would say very selfishly, I'm gonna say I believe it was the 2022 season when USC came to play us, and that was Caleb Williams' Heisman year.
Oh
And I was on the
yeah,
sideline for that game. So being able to, so in hindsight, being able to see not only the Heisman winner, but my future quarterback up close was something really cool. And I knew from the day I saw him that he was the real deal. If we're talking game day in general, it I want to say UCLA 2022 when we went into the Rose Bowl and beat a number 12 UCLA team. But I think I kind of have to say the 2023 Alamo when we beat Oklahoma, just because I mean it's hard to beat a win like that. Going into not having been to a bowl game, I think it was like 8 or 7 years, and going in there and winning one of the biggest bowl games against a blue blood program like Oklahoma, like that
that's
was pretty special, and that's something, and that's a memory I'm gonna have with me for a while. My first ever bowl game win.
yeah. Them bowl games are always something special, man. It's like I guess it's like a luxury
Yeah,
experience looking from afar. Just even seeing it from other guys that I know. Hey, that 2022 one. That's the one we ran into each other, right? The UCLA one when you guys came
yeah,
up to the Rose Bowl.
that was actually.
That was
Hmm.
fire. Dude, it's so cold in that stadium
Yeah.
though. Oh my gosh. I was like,
Oh, oh no, I was absolutely freezing the whole game, but like it was worth it because we somehow came back and won. So
yeah. And that was the thing. I was like, oh my UCLA buddy, they're depressed as shit, man. This game, it was not fun in the stands seeing all the UCLA fans being mad. But hey, that was a cool experience, man. Definitely for me as well. Just getting to be in the Rose Bowl and just obviously I'm more used to being in the Coliseum. Kind of going back to what you were saying, seeing Caleb Williams.
yeah,
That was a very very awesome experience being up front at the student section for that. But yeah, man, as we wrap things up for today's pod, listen, man, I just want to thank you for coming on, giving your little draft analysis takes, man. It was plenty of fun, man. I've been really wanting a long time to do obviously this and getting more guests on the show. And yeah, man, hopefully sometime in the future we can have you back on sometime after the draft, maybe before training camp starts or whatnot, and just get your overall predictions for the season, man. Oh no. Hey, you might be disconnected. Oh no, we good, we good, we
okay,
good.
now we're back.
Yeah. No, man, I was just like saying, hey, bro, like hopefully next time we can have you on closer around maybe like a training camp, before the season starts. Maybe get your takes after the draft has happened and just give your overall takes on that on your Chicago Bears.
Man, yeah, no, we can definitely link up, and we'll see. Yeah, we'll see how the Bears are doing out. I never know with them.
It's no Bears. Hey, you gotta do what Caleb Williams does. You know the little claw thing. That's how you have to sign off. Oh man, you gotta do it for the one time for the people, if connection allows, of course. That is the
What
biggest.
am I doing?
Um, hold on. I think your video feed cut out. There we go. I was gonna say, you gotta do the you gotta do the little claw shit that Caleb Williams does when he goes the Bears.
Do I give the claw too, like Caleb?
Yeah, yeah. You gotta do the full thing, bro. As an avid Bears fan, that's your team. That's your QB. Oh no. Oh my gosh. Hey, this is fun, man. Y'all are in for a treat of one hell of an episode. There we go. Video feed is good.
Do I gotta do it for the one time?
You do have to do it for the one time. That's how we signing this off.
All right.
Come on.
Bears.
Nah, that keeps cutting off the foot. Oh, the feed is cutting off. Oh well, it's okay. We heard the Bears. That's the most important, man. I'll let you get back to what it was you was doing, and I shall wrap things up here. Anyways, guys, if you guys enjoyed today's episode, enjoyed our draft talks, our speculation, and just overall our thoughts on who's going to go where and sort of the team's philosophies heading in to this very spicy NFL draft out in
This is
Lambeau Field.
bad.
Make sure you guys leave a like, share, and subscribe if you're new, man. Because if you watching this, you're not subscribed. What are you doing, man? And let us know, how did we do with our takes? What do you think? What are your thoughts on my takes? Do you guys agree with what Andrew was saying? And who are some other sleeper picks that you guys think we should probably have talked about more, or that you guys have in your radar? Let us know in the comments below. And with that being said, I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.